Don't ever give anybody permission to make you feel inferior.
Christine Durham has never been afraid to chart her own path, but she never dreamed that path would lead her to become the first woman Chief Justice of the Utah Supreme Court. She's used her strength to be a trailblazer, to raise 5 children, and to provide an example for many other young women. When you were a young girl, did you always know you wanted to go into law, or at least you wanted to have a career?
I'm not quite sure where those ambitions came from, but I remember them from my youngest years. It was very conscious, and it was pretty firmly entrenched by the time I got to college. In fact, one of the reasons I fell in love with my husband was that he was the first fellow that I had dated, and especially a Mormon fellow, who did not blanch at the idea of my having a career. He knew that was what I wanted, and that was fine with him.
Well, a lot of what I've read talks about, kind of breezes through how he was in medical school, you were in law school, and you were raising your family. And I have to know more details about how exactly you did that.
My husband George is my secret weapon, and I always advertise him as such. I thought 2 children would be a nice rational number. He wanted 6. We ended up with 4 of our own, and then we fostered a nephew. So I said, all right, I'll have them, but it's got to be 50-50. You've got to be willing to do as much as I do in terms of looking out for their welfare and taking care of them. And he did that.
Early on, she paved the way for other women in her chosen field of study and in her career.
I graduated from law school in 1971. Fewer than 2% of the national population of lawyers was female. I remember trying one of my first cases as a lawyer, and the judge afterwards told me I'd done a really good job for a woman lawyer. So,
what did she say?
And then I just smiled and said, "Thank you, Your Honor."
Were you always aware that you were being watched?
Absolutely.
Scrutinized?
Absolutely. Oh, yes. And that's one of the hard things about people who come into the room first and are the only one there of their color or their gender, whatever it might be. You really realize that people are noticing you, they're watching you.
Her legendary work ethic and calm competence eventually led to her appointment by Governor Scott Matheson to the Utah Supreme Court, eventually as Chief Justice.
Professionally, I care a great deal about the judicial branch of government in the state of Utah.
What have been some of the challenges over your life or career that have been the hardest for you to face?
One of the greatest challenges, but also productive of some of the greatest joy, was the birth when I was 31 years old of our youngest daughter who has Down syndrome. We had to make our way, and every year, every stage, every decision was a question of figuring out what she needed and how we were going to get it. And monitoring it to make sure it was going to work.
Through those struggles as a mother and as a judge, Christine relied on the gospel to keep her centered.
The message of the atonement and the message we understand of overcoming separation, loss, grief, and death has been a mainstay for all of my life. And even when I have had periods of my life when I'm one of those Mormons who's hanging on by her fingernails, that sense of transcendence and of support and solace has sustained me.
What advice would you give to other young women who are looking to be the kind of trailblazer you were?
You know, it sounds really trite, but you've got to follow your own dreams and you have to make your own decisions about your own life. And I worry that too many young women feel that they have to do what they're told instead of what they believe they were meant to do. And I hope they won't make that choice.
What is your proudest legacy?
I'm very grateful that George and I have had such a long and successful marriage. We really have managed to be soulmates. We've known each other for well over 50 years now, and it's been very good.
When interviewing these women, I was inspired by each of their stories. They taught me that strength and struggle go together, but that we can live our lives with hopeful optimism. Each one is a voice of strength. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day.